in a world that says do it yourself, and what happens when you just can't do it yourself? You know, I mean, we live in a world that says, okay, it's all on you. But then one day you wake up and you go, man, it's just, I can't do it. I don't have what it takes to do everything. The biggest challenge human beings face is we simply are unable to save ourselves. Honestly, we are simply unable to do it. Well, welcome everybody to the Salty Pastor Podcast. Today, Christmas. Why is Christmas the most important holiday in Western civilization? Well, I want to welcome you to the Salty Pastor Podcast. Do you know where you're going in life? Do you look back over this last year and feel like it lacked any type of significance, or maybe you just meandered? Well, are you living each day with a sense of purpose and significance? And if not, why not? Would you like to? You know, I don't want you to fret this Christmas season. I don't want you to be under the burden or the yoke of not knowing who you are, where you're going, what the point and purpose of your life is. Therefore, the Salty Pastor Podcast is here for you. We're not here to tell you what to think, but help you think for yourself. Tell you what to believe, but clarify what you believe by giving you the truth and comparing what you believe with the unadulterated truth. We're here to coach you up in your faith. We're not here to judge you or criticize you or denigrate you. We all have enough of that in life. What we're here to do is coach you up in your faith so that you can know and live every day differently than everybody else. You know, Dave Ramsey has a catchphrase. He goes, well, if you live like no one else, you'll live like no one else. And his point is if you live on a budget and save money, then later on in life, you're going to have wealth and you'll live like no one else. Well, that's actually, I think, kind of just fruit on the tree of a greater reality. And that is that when you compare what you believe with the unadulterated truth, then what happens is you start living like no one else. And then what you experience in your life is a life like no one else. You need somebody, and this is what the Salty Pastor Podcast is about. This is what I want to do for you, to help you understand that it is possible, very possible, to live each and every day better. I don't mean doing things that are more fun or more adventurous, even though those things are great things. They're awesome. What I mean is that each day gives you a sense of satisfaction. You don't feel lost or unmotivated, wondering if you're just taking up space. And this is what the Salty Pastor ecosystem is designed to do. It challenges you to think for yourself. It challenges you to figure out what you believe and why you believe it. And it helps you do the work necessary for you to live the life. Well, let me put it this way, your own life. That's right. It's your life. You need to live it. No one else can do it for you. So it all comes down to this. This is my gift to you this Christmas season, is we have been trained to think in a way. That's right. It's not so much what we're thinking, but how we think. I call this a frame of reference. We've been trained to think in a way where other people do our thinking for us. We're told, listen to the experts, listen to the elites. You don't have time to think about this and figure it out for yourself. Just trust us. We know better. And the end result is that we become sheeple. That's right. People who act like sheep instead of sheepdogs. And that's the quickest way to lose any sense of who you are as a person. When you become a sheeple, you live lost. You have no idea why you're here on this planet. And when your life is directionless, if it's, lacks direction, or you don't know where you're headed, then there's no way to live significantly or with meaning and purpose. So you really have to overcome those things, and you can do it. You should do it. You will do it. So if you're a person who's dissatisfied with the status quo, you're tired of shallow Christianity that's designed to just make you feel better about yourself, if you're skeptical of other people telling you what to think and how to live, then the Salty Pastor Podcast is for you. So welcome to the Salty Crew, and I am your salty pastor. So today's podcast is simply this: December 24th, Christmas Eve, and what in the world is Christmas all about? Now, on the 25th, tomorrow, people across the globe are going to be celebrating the birth of Jesus Christ. This thing has become so big, it's unbelievable. Here is a map showing all the countries that celebrate Christmas with an official public holiday. Okay, not people just like do it in their home privately, but I mean, it's official. The two colors of red, this one kind of a light red or pink, the other one is a deep red. All that indicates is whether they do it 1 day or 2 days as a public holiday, okay? Notice something really important. The largest nation of Muslims in the world is Indonesia. And notice that Indonesia celebrates Christmas as an official public holiday. Isn't that fascinating? Look at India. Right? India is either equal to China in population or has now exceeded China's population. It's like 1.3 billion people. It's huge. It is predominantly Hindu and Buddhist. I mean, well into the 80-90%. And guess what? They celebrate Christmas as an official public holiday. 73% of American Hindus celebrate Christmas. 75% of American Buddhists celebrate Christmas. Now, this seems strange. This seems strange to me that so many do, but it's not unexpected when you think about who Jesus really is. I guess what I would say is actually more strange to me is this, is that in America and in Britain and in France and Germany, the celebration of Christmas has become controversial, and it's even become considered inappropriate in some places. That we're not tolerant of people who don't believe the way we believe, and so we shouldn't celebrate Christmas. And so, as your salty pastor, in this new, ethos of being inclusive and sensitive, I've decided that no longer am I going to say Merry Christmas. I've decided I'm just going to stop saying Merry Christmas. Instead, what I'm going to say is Happy Birthday to the one and only Savior of the world, Jesus Christ, God's only Son. I'm hoping that one is less controversial than Merry Christmas. What do you think? Drop a comment. Let me know. Now, why is it important for us to celebrate Christmas? Even people who don't believe. So the deeper question I'm asking is, everyone who's a follower of Christ knows why we celebrate Christmas. The question is, why should a nation celebrate Christmas? Why should America continue to celebrate Christmas? Even people who don't believe, like in Indonesia and India, why should they observe Christmas? Well, Christmas obviously is a celebration of the birth of the Messiah, the Savior of the world, the ultimate rescuer and Savior for mankind. Jesus vanquished evil, the ultimate consequence of evil, which is separation from God. He conquered the ultimate motivator for oppression and falsehood once and for all. I mean, boom, it was finished. So what this does is it makes Jesus the most revolutionary figure in all human history. No other religion, no other belief system makes the claim that it was founded by a Messiah. Isn't that interesting? Christianity is unique that way. And across cultures throughout human history, people have sought to flee oppression. People have sought to escape persecution. So you don't have to believe that Jesus was the Messiah in order to acknowledge a simple fact, and that is human beings want to be free and that they will escape, whenever made possible, persecution and oppression. But also, when you celebrate Christmas, you're celebrating the need for people not to just be free, but to be free of, I guess the best way to say it is incompleteness. They need to be free from emptiness. They need to be free from the failures of their lives. And this is another way of saying is that every human being needs redemption. And Jesus is the only one who claimed to ever offer redemption for the human race and to do so without cost. It was simply an act of grace on his part. So even though Christmas is a uniquely Christian holiday designed for the purpose of worshiping the birth of Jesus, massive amounts of non-believers are attracted to the vibe, to the underlying core values of what Christmas is all about. People are attracted to the expression of gift giving, which is simply a reflection of the unconditional love of Jesus towards us in giving that gift. People are attracted to the festive colors, the bright lights, the decorations. Why? Well, they are all designed to bring beauty and joy into life. And what did Jesus bring? The greatest, most beautiful, joyful thing you could ever imagine. You know, another thing that I want you to think about is this. A recurring theme in Western classical literature, like Charles Dickens and Lord Byron's poetry, and it just goes on, is that classical literature captures the underlying point of life reflected in the celebration of the birth of Jesus. So like when Dickens wrote The Christmas Carol, notice what the whole vibe of that whole story was about. It's one of the most popular stories, even in today's world. And the name of the main character is Ebenezer Scrooge. Everybody knows what Scrooge means. When someone's like a real tightwad, or they're withholding, or they don't give, or they don't engage with people, they don't care about people, they go, whoa, that guy's a Scrooge, right? But do you know what Ebenezer is? A lot of people have no idea what Ebenezer is. Well, Ebenezer is an old English word that we don't use anymore, but it was the wellspring of joy, or the wellspring of warmth, the wellspring of your heart. And so the main character, Ebenezer Scrooge, basically was a play on words. And that is, he was designed and meant to live his authentic self, but he had, because of life, restricted and cut that off. He choked it almost to death. Now, modern classics, even today, it's really interesting, reflect so many of the biblical themes at Christmas. The notion, I mean, look at Superman. It's so interesting to me that Superman is such a unique icon of American society, right? And yet, what's the whole point? Is that there's someone who has something that no other human being possesses that can attempt to save the world. And so what's interesting today, I find so fascinating, is that all the new renditions of Superman and all the new exploratory of Superman is that what they're doing is they're trying to focus on his humanity more and more and more and make him more flawed, more incomplete. There's even one storyline where Superman becomes evil, right? And narcissistic. It's just interesting to me that progressive leftist ideology, cultural Marxism pollutes everything. But that's why stories today don't resonate with human beings anymore. And that is because there's always got to be a struggle between good and evil. That's where drama comes from. Great storytelling comes from, is there's a struggle between good and evil, and there needs a critical element in the struggle, and that is the role of a savior or a rescuer. So this is why societies are attracted to the vibe of Christmas, because it holds all of these elements. I think there's other reasons too of why non-believers should celebrate Christmas, and here they are. In a world that says do it yourself, and what happens when you just can't do it yourself? You know, I mean, we live in a world that says, okay, it's all on you. But then one day you wake up and you go, man, it's just, I can't do it. I don't have what it takes to do everything. The biggest challenge human beings face is we simply are unable to save ourselves. Honestly, we are simply unable to do it. The greatest and most grand experiments in humans attempting to save themselves, to create a human heaven here on earth, you could say, are socialism and communism. The most incredibly evil human creations in all of history. In an attempt for humans to save themselves, what do they end up doing is dehumanizing everyone in the process. Many people see the story of Babel in Genesis 11 as a point where all the different languages originated. But oftentimes I think people miss the entire point of the Tower of Babel. The entire point of the Tower of Babel is that human beings had grown to the point where they believed they were capable of building a tower to God. Well, what is this a metaphor? What is this analogous to? It's the notion that we can climb to the level of God ourselves through our own efforts. We can become God. And it was in that arrogance that God says, it's foolishness, because you are not able to save yourselves. So you don't have to believe that Jesus is the Messiah. Now, I think that's an irrational choice, but that's for another discussion. What I would say, though, is that you might think to yourself, I don't need to believe Jesus is real, and yet you can still celebrate his birth because you're celebrating a reality, a fact of human experience or human existence. And that is, no matter how well-intended, no matter how much effort we put into it, the one thing humanity has been incapable of doing is saving itself. We cannot heal our souls collectively or individually. And that's why celebrating Christmas is so important. It's an act of humility and acceptance of who we are as human beings. When we celebrate Christmas, whether you're a believer or a non-believer, you're celebrating some of the core original values that formed the nation of America, right? For instance, number one, when you celebrate Christmas, you are celebrating the priority of truth. That's right. You are celebrating the priority of truth and the importance of growing in knowledge. So in a way, you're celebrating the need for education and the desire to educate everyone, regardless of their ethnic or socio background. You believe in the priority of truth and growing knowledge when you celebrate Christmas. Now, some of you might think, well, Salty Pastor, how in the world do you make that connection? Well, Jesus created the greatest expansion of knowledge in the pursuit of knowledge and truth in human history, bar none. You cannot make the argument that there is any more significant figure in all of recorded human history that created the greatest expansion of the pursuit of truth and knowledge in human history. In his book, excerpt from, in his book, Who is This Man? John Ortberg, did I say that right? Ortberg. There you go. That's right. John Ortberg wrote a book. Sorry. And it's called Who is This Man? And here is an excerpt. That's why I read that word out loud. This is what he says. The historical impact of Jesus' thinking is so pervasive that it is often taken for granted. The record of his life and teaching, the Gospels, have impacted the world so much they have been translated into 2,527 languages. The second most translated book, Don Quixote, has been translated into about 60 different languages. The Bible is the best-selling book of all time, according to the Guinness Book of World Records. The second best-selling book of all time, according to the Guinness Book of World Records, is the Guinness Book of World Records. That's kind of funny, I think. In the academic world, scholars keep score by how often an article they write is cited by other scholars. By this sheer secular score, Jesus' intellectual impact is unprecedented. According to Harvard professor Harvey Cox, and I quote, "The words of the Sermon on the Mount are the most luminous, most quoted, most analyzed, most contested, most influential moral and religious discourse in all of human history." This may sound like an overstatement, but it is not. So when you celebrate Christmas, you're celebrating the birth of Jesus, who brought the greatest expansion of knowledge and the pursuit of knowledge in the history of humanity. When you celebrate Christmas, you're not only celebrating the birth of Jesus Christ, Son of God, Savior of all humanity, you're also celebrating the greatest expansion of art and literature that you could ever imagine. Between 500 AD, between 1500 and 1600 AD, commonly known as the Renaissance period, art historians acknowledge that it was the greatest expansion of art in the history of the world. Music, literature, sculpting, painting, you name it, it happened during this period. And why did it happen? All because of Jesus. That's right. When you look back at Michelangelo's works and all the great sculptors and all the great painters, the primary theme in every single one of the things that they did was Jesus or one of the stories of the Bible. This is one of the greatest expansion of music. When you look back at classical music, you look at all of the symphonies that were written, everything from Handel's Messiah to Beethoven's 9 symphonies to Mozart, Bach, all of these things were driven because of Jesus. So when you're celebrating Christmas, you are celebrating the greatest expansion of art and literature in the world. Another reason why you should celebrate Christmas, even if you're a non-believer, is because you're celebrating something significant, and that is the rule of law. It's about justice over power. You know, Roman society was really interesting, and that is it was built on a very rigid enforced social classes. You had senators, equestrians, patricians, plebeians, and slave, and then you had freemen. 90% of the Roman populace was peasant farmers, and so they were slaves in some form or another. Now, they could have been free men, but they weren't a part of the higher Roman society in Rome. But because Jesus came, he completely upended this, and he brought about the notion that every human being is valuable, that they have a personal or significant individual sovereignty. These are significant, very significant ideas that seeded into Western culture. And your ability to choose for yourself, your right to make choices and live according to the dictates of your own conscience, all came from Jesus. So when you celebrate Christmas, you're celebrating the rule of law or justice over power. I mean, when you think about it, you could also just simply say that even non-believers every single day recognize Jesus as the most far-reaching revolutionary figure, because all history is impacted by his life, and time is split that way. You have before Christ and after Christ. Even though there's this movement today that wants to call before Christ, they're trying to change to BCE, which is before the Common Era, and then they want to say after the Common Era. It's so ridiculous because it's an attempt to dilute it or water it down, but it still splits time on Jesus as the significant point. So it's so interesting to me how people who try to get rid of Jesus still can't do it, no matter how hard they try. Finally, I'd like to focus on how when you celebrate not Christianity, but Christmas as a citizen of the United States of America. It doesn't matter what religion you follow. It doesn't matter what belief system you follow. It's important to know this, and that is, as a Christian holiday, Christianity is foundational to the Declaration of Independence and the formation of the Constitution of the United States. So celebrating Christmas is almost like celebrating the significance of the 4th of July for the citizens of America and why it should always be a public holiday. Christmas is foundational to our original character. It is all about the philosophy that Jesus preached in his revelatory form. If Christ had never been born and died the way he did, all of history would have been completely different. Neither Columbus nor the Pilgrims would have received or have been motivated by the good news of salvation through Christ to explore, establish new communities with a higher moral purpose in the new world. There would have never been a constitutional government created in the way and time that it was in America without these necessary conditions. First, the foundation of recognizing man's unalienable rights of freedom and equality that came out of the teachings of Jesus Christ. We could not have the Constitution today without this basic core value. Man has an unalienable right as an individual, and we state that in the Declaration of Independence. But you have to understand, this right was not fully recognized until the Protestant Reformation in the 1600s. Just, 150 years at the most before the Declaration of Independence was signed. Second, the unprecedented collection of Christian human genius that came together. Rather amazing at the same time, but people we call the Founding Fathers, who were 95% Christian in their beliefs. It was their extraordinary biblical, historical, and classical learning, together with their wisdom, temperament, and practical experience, that enabled them to write and frame the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. Equally important, those Christian founders knew the sin and depravity that exists in every human being, and it would lead to abuse of power and tyranny if left unchecked. And so they did something that had never been done in human history. What they did is they structured the government with checks and balances between the three branches of government, and through the federalist system of division of power between the states and the federal government. All of these things were designed to what? Keep in check the human depravity when it has power to abuse that power. Lord Acton's famous quote is what? Right? Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Finally, the constitutional republic formed by the Founding Fathers provided for a protected individual right. In other words, you as an individual have rights and freedoms, and you are independent of what government does according to the dictates of your conscience. Now, that doesn't mean you can be lawless. What it does mean is that you have a right to your own opinion, and you have a right to your own thoughts. And if I could just give a side note, this is why I do the Salty Pastor, because I can't tell you how many people want today to be told what to think. Even in Christianity, I mean, you go to church after church after church, and people are going to churches where the lead pastor stands up there and says, this is what you're supposed to think this way, you'll have a better life. People are attracted to that. Why? Because our educational system for the last 70 years has trained people to not think for themselves. And so now we're seeing this play out, even in our churches today. And so that drives me crazy. I want you to make up your own mind and think for yourself. Because our constitutional republic, formed by the Founding Fathers, provided for a protected individual right and freedom and independence in America, it achieved something that no nation has ever achieved, and that is material prosperity. It has brought more poor people into wealth than any other nation in the history of the world. America today is more wealthy than any nation at any time based on any metric. And it's done that because of what? Protected individual rights and freedoms of independence. It's all about liberty. In addition to this, I'd like to point out the American constitutional framework enabled people to move closer to the divine image in which all people are created, free and equal, more than they would have achieved under any prior system. So people now had the freedom to reflect the image of God in them in a system based on liberty and personal responsibility. So when you celebrate Christmas, you know what you're doing? You are celebrating so much more than just the birth of Jesus. You're celebrating the impact of his life on you, your family, and the world around you. Celebrating not just liberty, not celebrating, free markets, not celebrating economic pursuits. You know what you're celebrating? You're celebrating the infinite love of God for you and for his people. I mean, what could be more tender, more gentle, more humble than choosing to be incarnated as a baby. Paul says in Philippians that Jesus, who was God, equal with God, part of God, he humbled himself and emptied himself. Think about those words for just a moment. He emptied himself. I mean, how in the world could the creator of the universe, the creator of everything that is, empty himself? When you look at the universe and how big it is, it's astounding. I mean, there are billions or trillions of galaxies, and, there are millions and billions of solar systems inside of these galaxies. And yet it's so immense, we can't even begin to fathom how big it is. And yet God's bigger than all of that. I mean, he is before and after all time and reality. And yet he emptied himself of all that in order to take the form of a bondservant. Why would he do that? Well, what could possibly inspire God to do that? Nothing more than love. My friends, I hope that this Christmas is a time of blessedness for you. And I just want to say to you that it's an honor to be able to share with you the love of Christ, by which I have been saved and redeemed and made new. And I can't ask for any greater blessing or gift for you to receive than the love of Jesus Christ in your heart. Salty Pastor, signing off, and Merry Christmas.